All right. Welcome everyone to another Trauma Talk Tuesday segment with myself, your freedom coach, Nataushia Miller, and our guest speaker this evening, author Tiffany Lindsey, who is the author of this book. Yes, I'm starting early with a plug-in. Y'all gonna hear about the book all throughout. The Root Remains, and it is available on Amazon. So let's get started. So our topic this evening is children in trauma. What about the kids? What about the children? And that is definitely a question to ask in this hour as we are experiencing a worldwide pandemic. What better time than this to have such a conversation where we really look at traumatic experiences through the lens of our children and equip ourselves to walk them through the process of healing and overcoming the traumas of life so that when they become adults, they are not spending their adulthood trying to recover from childhood trauma. As a lot of us are, okay? So we don't want to just fight our giants in preparation for them, but we want to teach them how to fight their giants. So I am so excited to have author Tiffany here, who is very passionate about helping our children navigate the storms of life in a healthy, productive way and educating us as adults, parents, teachers, whatever it is that we do to serve children on how to help them in that process. So Tiffany, before we even get into the good stuff, share with us how did you even come into this place of doing the type of work that you do when it comes to really helping children navigate the storms of life and various traumatic experiences?
So I've been working with children for the past decade, and I've worked in public schools, I've worked in charter schools, preschools, I've worked at a homeless shelter with children there, and I've worked as an ABA therapist. So I've dibbled and dabbled in a little bit of just about everything when it comes to children, and I've noticed just some general things, and a huge thing was behavior. And a lot of times people be like, oh, well, I don't know why they're acting like this or why they're always doing that. And it would be such a focus on the behavior that people would never think to ask why. And it wasn't until people began to ask why they were able to work through whatever it was that their child was going through. Because if you don't ask, you won't know. And so I think that's a huge thing that inspired me, because we see it every day. We see it on the news. We see it even within our own families, how, and even let's be honest, even within ourselves, how we're handling things, how we're reacting, responding to things, but it may not necessarily be in the best way possible. So that's where I got that inspiration from, because it needs to be talked about, and people are talking about it, but not a lot of people are.
Yes, most definitely. I love how you're really highlighting the fact that it's the behavior, and then we're not, and I noticed this too, even working in the human service sector, that they're not necessarily trained to investigate the causes behind the behavior. And a lot of times it's because the system isn't set up for them to even do that. People come into the system with a heart to transform lives, but realistically, how can you transform a caseload of 40 people? You know what I'm saying? It's not even humanly possible to investigate each individual case. To address it appropriately, to really get to the root of the behavior. And next thing you know, we're guilty of generalizing. And then we don't even have time to maximize the time that we have to have those conversations because of all of the blue tape, the bureaucracy, the paperwork, and the system. Oh yeah, come on, y'all. We
Mm-hmm.
gonna keep it real up in here because I know how it
Talk about it. Listen, this is so people don't talk about it. It's like the elephant in the room. Listen.
Okay, we
Come
know
on.
it's the real deal. Okay, so share with us some ways that, because for us to really be influential as kingdom leaders, we have to think of creative ways to navigate these systems that's not set up for us to be successful in impacting the lives of the people that we serve. So share with us some ways in which you began to do that and began to be a light and really bring forth some impactful solutions to these behavioral challenges that you will see children having, or battling in these various settings that you worked in.
I would say definitely think outside of the box. As cliche as it sounds, but especially depending on what kind of area you work in. Like you said, there's this blue tape, there's this certain set of rules, like you have to do this, you can't do that. And even though there are some rules and some boundaries, you can still be creative in maneuvering how you want to maneuver when it comes to children. So the last time I was actually in a classroom, I worked with middle school students, and y'all, I'm not gonna lie, I thought that I was gonna get ran over because I'm small in stature. I thought they was gonna look at me like, who are you? But it was the exact opposite. That was the time where I found out that so many children, they just need somebody a lot of times to just listen. So definitely be open, like be genuine, because children can sense when somebody is genuine and authentic, and they can also sense when you just ain't about their life. You're not about it. And so they'll either come to you or they just won't bother you. They won't have anything to do with you. So I think definitely making yourself vulnerable and open, because let's be real, sometimes it's hard for us as adults to be vulnerable. But when we show ourselves vulnerable and when we're able to build rapport, when we're able to build relationships with children, then 9 times out of 10, eventually they will open up to us. And when that happens, sometimes all it is listening. You may not need to give advice at that moment. They may just need to tell you whatever, and then you can eventually lead up to being able to tell advice. And sometimes it's even doing activities. So one thing I'm very big on, because I do it myself, I love writing. I'm a writer, journaling. So that can be in a journal, that can be in a notebook, that can be on a sheet of paper. Use what you have. Like, don't overthink it. I think a lot of times we overthink things and we're like, oh, well, I don't have this together and I don't have that together. You don't need all of that. Trust me, you don't. All you need to do is be willing and just go ahead and start. And discernment is a huge thing. Like you gotta stay prayed up. You gotta stay prayed up, because we can only see so much in the natural, but there's a whole lot. I'm about to get deep here, not too deep, but there's a whole lot that is going on spiritually. But if people don't believe that, or they're like, oh, that's just whatever, then I feel like that's where even more pushback, where the struggle comes even more, because you're choosing to believe, oh, well, this is just how that child is, or they'll just grow out of it, or whatever, just diminishing where that child is now and exactly what is happening. Like, it's much bigger than what we can see. So I know that was like, I'm sorry.
Oh no, this is great information. Welcome to those of you who are chiming in with us for the live broadcast. I see you out there, Miss Lucy and Kenyatta and whoever else, but those are the 2 that we've seen comment so far. So welcome, and to those of you who are catching the playback. And so what I really heard from you with welcome, Miss Shavia, is to get outside of the box, get creative, but most importantly, it's about the posture and position of your heart.
Yes.
The children know if you're genuine and authentic and you really care about their well-being. So it's the posture of your heart that will open the door for them to even open up and dialogue and build that rapport. Also, be present. Whenever you're in that time frame of actually having hands-on engagement with the children, don't think about the paperwork. Don't think about what you got to do next or what you didn't finish before you started. Be present in that moment with them so that you can maximize that time with your creativity. And then you said, think of activities, different activities to keep them engaged, to get them to open up. And then how journaling is a key component to helping them navigate their emotions and things of that nature. And then the last thing that you said is advocate for them in the spirit. That's what that's the whole point of being prayed up and sharpening our discerning of spirit so that we can advocate for them in the spiritual realm as well, because we do not believe that they are what they are. Like, this is it for them. They're a lost cause because they have these behavioral issues. No, we're believing what the prophetic words that God has spoken over their life before the foundations. So we're advocating for them in the spiritual realm as well. I love it. I love it. These are some good nuggets, Tiffany. Yes, indeed. Once again, let's go ahead and do a plug-in. The book. This is Tiffany's book, and it's called The Root Remains, and it is available on Amazon. Get your copy, okay? So what's next? I don't even know what another question to ask you, but what else is important for us to know to really be able to maximize our time and really make a huge impact in the lives of children whenever we have an opportunity to do so?
So I'm not sure if what I'm about to say, because I know you shared it, has to do a lot with what I'm about to answer. The movie Wolf that was on Amazon Prime. And I would like to, if you don't mind, I would like to use that, like, just with the breaking down of just what I observed in watching it. Is that okay?
That is a-okay. And you gave a great trigger alert. So I'm just going to take what you have to say about the movie, because I don't plan on watching it, sister girl. So go ahead and break it down and educate us people, and to all of you who's brave enough to watch it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Nataushia is right. Look, huge trigger warning. So I apologize in advance, but so I find myself a lot of times, just before I go into that, watching things that are triggering. And a lot of times I didn't understand why. And ultimately, I think what it is that what I love seeing is the breakthrough, or the people coming out of what they were once in. And so I just wanted to put that out there. But the movie Wolf is actually on Amazon Prime, and it's a film by Yake Smith. I hope I'm saying his name right. But what happens is there is a young man, and unfortunately he is being molested, and his parents don't know at all. And it's actually been happening for a long time. He never told anybody or anything like that, until another trigger warning, just all of this, just big trigger warning. He tried to commit suicide because he was like, he couldn't take it anymore. The person that was abusing him, he's like, well, why can't I come to you anymore? Why are you now ignoring me? He just had so many different emotions. And so his parents found him. He ends up hospitalized. And before he committed suicide, he threw his phone, and on the phone, it had the evidence. And that's where just everything comes out. But I'm not going to tell any more, because I feel like I've given a lot already. But just a breakdown of making sure that we're present. Like I said, making sure we're present in the lives of our children, because it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. Like, a lot of children are seeking out things from different things and different people, because sometimes that's what they're not getting. There's this void that they're trying to fill. And even more so when your child isn't comfortable around a certain person or a certain environment, don't take that lightly. there's a beginning to where a younger boy, he ends up being around the person that was the molester, and he didn't want to be around him. He was acting very shy, hiding around his mom, and his mom was like, oh, he's just being shy. It's just something in my spirit. Before I even watched the whole movie, was like, no, it's more to that. So being able to pick up on certain signs and clues is not saying that, you know, every little thing, it means something. No, but what I am saying is that it's important to pay attention to your child. Pay attention to your child's behaviors. So that way, when something is out of the ordinary, you're able to pick up on it. And it's not like, oh, well, I didn't know because I was so busy with my life. And I get it. We're parents. You know, we have a lot going on. We have work. And even some of us are working through our own trauma still. But we can't forget about our babies.
Yes.
We can't forget about them. And another thing was hurt people hurt people. So sometimes when we go through traumas, whatever happens to us, we'll do that same thing to other people. And unfortunately, the molester was molesting because he was molested. And nobody knew that but him. And so if we're not open about ourselves, if we're not open with our own struggles, if we're not open with the skeletons in our own closet, then how can we ever get help? And if people are around, and if you see somebody not even just struggling with that, but if you see a child that's struggling or anything of that nature, whatever it is, make sure you ask questions. Make sure you keep them accountable. Hey, how are you doing? What's going on? So that way they know that somebody cares. That way they know that they have a chance, because we don't really know what children are going through when they go home. And this is from me speaking, working in the education system. You don't know what children are going back home to. We're kind of seeing it now because of the pandemic and seeing things through videos, and things are being exposed. But it's not that these things are new. These things have already been happening. But because of the situation that we're all in now, everything is just being brought even more forth to the light.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So 2 things that came to me while you were talking is one of the reasons why we may not be cognitive of the signs, and one may be because of fear. You know, because of some of the things that may have happened in our past, or some of the stories we've been traumatized by just listening to somebody else's story and things that they've gone through. We may have the tendency to fear having certain dialogue and conversations with our children that we need to have. And we may, and it's this distorted type of perception where we're like, oh, okay, if we don't really talk about it, then it won't happen. But that's operating in fear. And so typically what we fear it happens. That's a form of faith. It's this, you know, it's faith in the wrong direction. So I really wanted to highlight that, because that had came to me when you were talking about how, because I think we are present, but we can be blinded even in our present state, because we may be consumed with fear regarding certain issues that has become our reality these days in our society. And then the second thing that came to mind too, when you said to ask questions, that is very, very key, because as children, we know at the children's stage, they don't have their brain is not fully developed. They don't know how to critically think. Their brain doesn't even have the capacity to critically think. And they and process their emotions. So by us asking questions and having that type of dialogue that's more in question form rather than statement, that can help them with that process of thinking and processing their emotions, because we're like asking questions to draw it out, because we know that the behaviors of children is really their outward expression of their internal feelings
Exactly.
and
That's it.
thoughts that
That's it.
they can't put language to yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that's why the questions is so is vital for
It
the
is.
whole part of this whole thing in helping our children navigate the storms and traumas of life.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's true. That's true.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And to piggyback off of what you said, like if we as adults struggle sometimes with expressing our emotions and how we feel, imagine children.
Right.
Like some of us struggle with like, oh, imagine them. Like we have the vocabulary, we have the experience, we have more knowledge, but they don't. They haven't had that yet. So it's even more difficult for them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so little freedom coach moment here with that. Okay.
Listen.
So for those of us who still have some issues in that area, it is an indicator that we need to revisit some traumas of the past for healing, because this is the thing, you all. Unhealed trauma, if we have unhealed childhood traumas, a part of our development as a human being is stuck at that time frame of development. This is why this is so crucial for us to get the skills, for us to get the inner healing and deliverance we need from trauma to help them navigate their traumas, because any unhealed trauma, we're stuck at that level of development. And so if there's communication skills, if we having some issues with that, if we're having some issues with fully identifying our thoughts as opposed to our emotions and giving language to those, we need to go revisit something in the past and gain some inner healing so that we can catch up to where we're supposed to be in our maturity as adults.
True. That is so true.
Woo, this is a good stuff. My spirit is just over here rumbling. Yes, indeed. And let me tell y'all, this is the first time that Tiffany and I we've had a conversation, and I'm loving it.
Listen, we got to continue on, because I see what you put on Facebook, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. So I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Like-minded. So as we close, let's go ahead and talk about the book.
Okay,
this is the final plug-in. And it is called The Root Remains by Tiffany Lindsey. It's available on Amazon. So I love the way that you wrote the book, because it gives different scenarios of some challenges that young people may be facing, and different age too. So it's not just only childhood age, it's adolescent. It covers a wide range. And then there's some questions to really help us really think, how would we really respond to this situation? What are some actions and things that we would do to help? So I love the format of the book, because it really challenges us to think. So share with us what inspired your book, and whatever it is that you want to tell us about this book and how it helps us with children and trauma.
So what inspired me was just everyday life working with children. And I think what really got me going was when I worked at the homeless shelter, and trigger warning again, no shot there. But one of my co-workers, she was in a certain classroom with toddlers, but they were a little bit younger than the toddlers that I had. And she said that a parent came to her and was talking about how his daughter wasn't feeling good and what should he do. And she said, well, I can't really tell you exactly what to do, but If, you're seeing things that are still not quite right with her, go ahead and take her to the emergency room. So he went ahead and took her to the emergency room. They did routine blood work, urinalysis, usually what they do just to figure out what's going on with you. And the little girl's urinalysis came back and she had sperm in her urine.
Wow.
So, and that's just one of many things that I found out, my experiences working there. And that just inspired me to write. And I was like, okay, well, the root remains. It's like, we can't plant an apple seed, right? The tree grows and then it yields apples. But then we're trying to take it off. We're upset because it has apples, but we wanted oranges. That doesn't make sense. That's not what you planted.
Right.
And so we're trying to take off certain fruit. Like, oh, well, I don't like that. I don't like that. We're so focused on the surface that we forget to dig deep and go beneath. And so that's where the root remains. That's where I got that title from. It's just a plan to action, a call to action to dig deeper beyond what we can see, because a lot of kids are out here suffering and they need the help. They need somebody to not see through them, but to see in them. That's what a lot of them need. And that's why I wrote the book the way that I wrote it, because there's so many different stories, and all of my characters are fictional, but their stories are very real. They can happen. They have happened to so many people, unfortunately. So that's why I wrote it the way that I did. That's why I put the statistics, so that way people will be mindful of how often it is, because sometimes when we don't think about something or it's not really what we're focused on, then we won't be mindful of it until it's like brought to the forefront. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. And then you have people's attention there. And then I had the reflection part, because again, I'm a big writer and I really wanted people to be engaged with what they read. I wanted people to write down those. It's like, people don't have to use it, but I did want to create an opportunity to where people can write if they really, really wanted to. So that's where my inspiration came from. And that was a snowball effect, because there's so many other things that are in the work from that it's just like, it's like, wow, just seeing God move, seeing, just when you're obedient, and going forward, like regardless of what's popular, regardless of what you think people may want to hear or may not want to hear, because either way it needs to be said. So
right. Thank you so much for that story. And so I'm going to highlight a couple of things to make sure everyone caught what transpired as you shared that story, because I really, really felt your heart, the grievance of that young child having such a traumatic experience. And so what we witnessed in that story is indirect trauma, vicarious trauma. We're traumatized indirectly through someone else's traumatic experience. And this is why, and I'm big on journaling too. Right to heal. Okay.
Exactly. That part.
And then also another thing that stood out to me too, is those of us who are human service providers and we're working with these various populations, is compassion fatigue. And so those are like two different sides of the spectrum. So we have the capacity to grieve, to feel when we hear these stories, but there is a point where we can experience compassion fatigue, and now we're desensitized, and we're not having a natural, empathetic human response to the trauma.
Exactly.
So we want to be conscientious of both.
Mm-hmm.
When we experience the vicarious trauma effects, when we experience our natural human response to these stories, we need to process that.
Yeah.
We need to journal about it. Because we don't want it to plant seeds of fear in us. And now it's affecting how we raise and communicate and things with our own children. You know, that those experiences will come into our own lives. And now we're affected in how we move and navigate with our own families. And then secondly, we want to be conscientious too, because we never want to get to a place where we're desensitized and we hear these stories and something in us doesn't turn, something in us doesn't get upset, something in us doesn't want to cry. You know what I'm saying? So, if we're in that space, then we need to pull back and see what's really going on. Check our priorities, see what all we have on the plate. Because we always want to be sensitive to the experiences of humanity to where there is a response. And the way that we maintain that sensitivity is to engage it fully.
Yeah.
Take some time. It doesn't always have to be a traumatic experience that happens directly to you. When you witness something that yields a response in you need to take some time to process that. Don't just go on to your next.
Oh, I love that you're touching on that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and that's what I heard. Those two things I picked up on when you shared that story. Yeah. I'm right here with you, sister girl.
Yeah. I love that. Oh my goodness. I love that. You touched on that, because a lot of times people think that, like you said, something has to happen to you directly in order for you to experience trauma. And that's not true. That's not true at all. And even, even more so, it's not necessarily the trauma itself, but what happens after the trauma. Do you ever get help after the trauma? Are you able to ever heal after the trauma? Are you able? It's like so many, factors that go into it. And that's where PTSD comes in, because it's like a certain time frame that done passed by, and it's, oh my goodness, it's a lot. It's really a lot.
It's a lot. Yes. So author Tiffany and I, we implore you, we encourage you all to journal daily. Okay, make that a part of your daily routines. You want to release the pressures of the world. You want to release the residues of whatever traumatic experiences or stories you've heard throughout that day. You want to release, because God did not create us to carry it. A wise woman once told me, and this is what really helped me not succumb to compassion fatigue, because we can get to that point where it's like, I am tired of helping these people hearing all this stuff, and what she told me, a wise woman once told me, she said, you grab their situations with your hands, not your heart.
Ooh.
Because if you grab it with your hands, you can carry it over and release it to the Father. Come on now, somebody.
Ooh, that
was a lifesaver.
Wow.
And that's what keeps me standing today as I continue to work in this human service field and not fall prey to compassion fatigue and being desensitized because I have to grab the issues of the hearts of others with my hands and hand it over to the Father. It's only Him that yields the increase, y'all.
Come on. Ooh, that.
We are not the Savior. The Savior came and did what He needed to do. It's already been done. It's finished. Hallelujah, Lord Jesus. And so we just in the middle. You know, we in the middle. And that's how we operate in the middle effectively. You grab with your hands so that you can release it to the Father, not your heart. Because once you do that, now you're carrying it as if it's your own.
Yeah, and that's
Woo, Jesus. Come on now, somebody.
that right
I'm
there.
running in my spirit.
That right there. I mean, that's supposed to be marinating all night. Like, I'm gonna have to write that down too. So I wish I had a notebook and a pen right here. I'm like, are they big? That's
Yes, yes,
wow.
yes. So yes, as we close out, please share with us any closing remarks that you have. Those were mine. And then we gonna wrap it on up. For those of you who may just be tuning in, the book is The Root Remains by Tiffany Lindsey, and it is available on Amazon. Please go grab your copy today, and not only your copy, grab a few copies and bless somebody else with one that you know works with children. Let's be a blessing and help others. I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do the same. Okay. All right. Because this is my copy right here, but I'm about to do the same thing. I'm gonna do what I just said. I done told y'all to do. So I'm gonna order a couple of copies and mail them off to a few people that I know work with children and things of that nature. So Tiffany, I'm gonna hand the mic over to you. Share with us your closing words as we go ahead and close out this session.
Just be encouraged. Like this, and I'm speaking to parents. Listen, parents are parent. I have 3 kiddos, and I know it's not easy. And there's been some things in my life where it's been a struggle, things that I've had to work through, things that I didn't even realize I had to work through until I became an adult or until I had children of my own. And just give yourself grace. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to get it right all the time. And this is for anybody, not just parents, but anybody that's working with children in general. You don't have to have it figured out. It's not your job to, like Nataushia said, like grab it with your hand, not with your heart, so you can release it to the Father, because you know so many things, but he knows everything about that person, what they've gone through, where they are now. He knows everything. So give yourself the grace to do what you can, but also give yourself the grace to just lift it up to the Father, because it's so important, like she said, not to carry it, because you can get this from one person, get that from one person, and then you're burdened. Like we're not Jesus. Yes. No, he did it already. He did it already. So that's not your job to do. And I don't want anybody to feel guilty because they feel like, oh, well, I'm trying to help this person, but they're not listening, or they're just not seeing things the way that I'm seeing it. Plant that seed.
Yes.
You know, one person plants a seed, another one waters it. You may not ever see the growth or the development, but do what you can. Don't overthink it at all. Don't do it.
I love it. She hasn't been to none of my stuff, y'all, and that's one of the steps with overcoming trauma. Give yourself grace.
Come on. Oh, listen. We don't have to listen. My sister.
I love it.
Okay? Like, ooh.
Right. Praise the Lord. Okay. All right. So clearly, Tiffany and I could be on here all night. Okay. Yeah. So we about to let God's people go.
We ain't gonna hold y'all. We ain't gonna hold y'all.
Okay, so thank you to those of you who caught the live broadcast. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to those of you who catch the replay. Before we leave, where can everyone find you? If they want to connect with you, how do they connect with you, Tiffany?
Okay, so you can connect with me by going to handtoheartcoaching.com or social media handle, mostly on Instagram and Facebook. Just put in Hand to Heart Coaching. You put that in, you'll be able to find me. I share freebies, tips, all kinds of things. I do little short reels as well. So I'm trying to expand on the way outside of my comfort zone, outside of my box. Instead of just doing posts, I try to actually talk. So that way what I share, the information is a lot more engaging. So if you follow me there, any kind of way, I greatly appreciate the support. I really do.
Awesome, awesome. So hands to heart coaching across the social media world, and it's hands to heart coaching.com. Thank
Yes,
you so much. All
so
right.
thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. I really do.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for your yes. And thank you to those of you who caught the live broadcast and the replay. So this is your Freedom Coach, Nataushia Miller, and author Tiffany Lindsey, signing off until next time. Peace and freedom
Bye.
to you all.